Okay, slight confession. I am a little bit obsessed with planes. That was a Boeing 737. I just find them really fascinating. They're a great way of traveling from one faraway location to another really, really quickly. But sometimes planes can be a little bit of a soulless way to travel. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I've got a big journey ahead of me, but instead of flying, I'm going to embrace my spirit of adventure. I'm going to take the long way home. This is Stuttgart, where I've been given the keys to the latest RS6. But rather than test the car here and then fly back to the UK, I've decided to skip the plane completely and go on a 900-mile road trip to really get to know the car. And I can't think of a better car to do a long journey in than the Audi RS6. When they built this thing, they basically ticked every single box that you'd want from your ideal car. Good looks, tick. Practicality, tick. Big performance, tick, tick, boom. We'll get to the numbers in just a second, and they are very good numbers. But before we do that, I need to take this car someplace where we can really stretch its legs. Unfortunately, that place happens to be 100 miles in the wrong direction. This is the Black Forest, a mountain range in southwest Germany best known for inventing the cuckoo clock. It's also home to some of the finest roads in Europe, roads where we can properly examine what makes the RS6 special. The first thing you need to know is that it basically uses the same engine as the previous model, so it's a 4-litre twin turbocharged V8. That might sound slightly boring, but they have made some very interesting changes. They've fitted a bigger turbo and cranked up the boost pressure from 0.4 bar to 1.2 bar. So now it makes even more power, 600 metric horsepower and 800 newton meters of torque. That's an improvement over the old car, which only made 560 and 700 newton meters. Acceleration is, of course, pretty violent. It will do 0 to 62 in 3.6 seconds. That's an improvement over the previous car, which did it in 3.9. Top speed will depend on which version you go for. The basic car maxes out at 155, while launch edition cars will hit 174 flat out. Add carbon brakes to the mix, and they'll raise that limit to 189 miles an hour. The key thing though is the acceleration. It is absolutely violent. Every time you put your foot down, you unleash a torrent of torque and power and aggression. You genuinely have to prepare yourself mentally every single time you put your foot down. So quick. They use a dual clutch 8-speed box in this car, and it works so well. It's smooth, it's responsive, it's fast. It's so good that I find myself using it at every opportunity. The RS6 also has rear wheel steering, which means that at medium to high speeds, the back wheels turn in the same direction as the front wheels to maintain stability. But at low speeds, the back wheels turn in the opposite direction by up to 5 degrees. Now around town, that has the effect of minimizing the turning circle by around 1 meter. But out here on these roads, it has the effect of making the car very direct. It wants to turn into every single corner so aggressively. It feels like such an agile car. And the engine just sounds tremendous. It's a low, guttural, rumbling, offbeat monster of a V8. Sounds glorious. Petrol heads, you gotta enjoy this kind of thing while it's around, man, because it might not be around much longer. The RS6 handles superbly, even on the tight, twisty roads of the Black Forest. But as good as these roads might be, there's another reason I've chosen to come here. The Black Forest is famous for its roads, but it's also legendary for its cake. Right, so here's something you might not know about me. I am a massive dessert connoisseur. When you're in the UK, you might want to have a little bit of sticky toffee pudding, but when you're out here in the Black Forest, you got to get the dessert that the Black Forest is famous for, and that happens to be Black Forest Gâteau. This isn't going to look great, but I guarantee you it's going to taste fantastic. So good. And while we're here, we can take in a little bit of this car's beauty, because I happen to think that the RS6 is definitely one of the best looking estate cars on the market today. It's based on the standard A6 Avant, but it's had some fairly aggressive RS treatment. The two cars have very little in common aside from the front doors, roof and tailgate. The front end bears more than a passing resemblance to the R8, but features headlights from the A7. The bonnet has a bulging power dome, and the body has been widened 40mm thanks to new flared wheel arches. This launch edition also comes with a few distinct features, including 22-inch wheels, red brake calipers over steel discs, and gloss black styling cues. Of course, none of this comes cheap. The top-spec Vorsprung model costs £109,000, while this first edition will sell for £101,700. Even the standard car is £92,000. That's a lot of money. You know what else is a lot of money? Time. Go get back on the road. Some of you watching this might be thinking that driving a long distance might be a complete waste of time, but think about all the hassle that comes with flying. In this, the RS6, it's quiet, it's comfortable, it's luxurious, and you're not breathing in other people's air. These seats, by the way, are fantastic. They're not the traditional sports seats that you get in fast cars. They're proper chairs that you're completely happy to spend time in and sit in on long journeys. They're brilliant. There's also good space to take family, friends, and all their stuff. The boot provides 565 litres, although it's just over 100 litres less than, say, an Audi Q7. But the rear cabin is as spacious as any SUV, thanks to decent headroom and legroom, and there's plenty on board to keep you amused. When you fly, sometimes you get a decent in-flight entertainment setup, but mostly on short-haul flights, you don't get anything. But in the RS6, you get decent infotainment. I love the twin screen setup. So on the lower screen down here, you get all of your climate control settings, access to your heated seats. And even though I'm not the world's biggest fan of touch sensitive climate adjustment, you get haptic feedback to vibrate and let you know when you've clicked the button. It works really well. Then on the upper screen, you've got access to all of your music controls, your media playback, your telephone, your navigation. The maps are nice and responsive, they react really quickly. Plus you get a second map display on the instrument binnacle just ahead of you. So there's really no excuse whatsoever to get lost in an RS6. If you don't like using the inbuilt maps, there is of course the option to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. All in all, lovely infotainment. As spacious and as well equipped as the RS6 might be, there's only so long you can drive in a straight line, patting yourself on the back about how great the leather is, without wanting to pull over for some light relief. And 3 hours into my trip, I was in need of some light relief, in the form of a performance test. Audi reckon the RS6 will do 0 to 62 in 3.6 seconds, but it's not always good to take a manufacturer's word for anything. And I know a place where we can go and put that to the test. Let's do it. Okay, so the RS6 actually has its own built-in timer to let you know exactly how fast the car goes from 0 to 100, 0 to 200, quarter mile, or an eighth of a mile. But I've got my own independent adjudicator in the form of the Draggy lap timer, and this will tell me exactly, according to GPS, how fast this car is. Let's send it. Here we go. Good launch. That's 62. Now, according to the RS6, it did it in 4.0. What's the Draggy saying? Now, quick disclaimer, the Draggy actually measures 0 to 60, not 0 to 62. And it's doing 0 to 60 in 3.87 seconds. So that's probably 0 to 62 in 4 seconds there. They're pretty consistent, pretty accurate. I'm going to call that 4 seconds. Quick, but definitely not quite as quick as Audi claim. What's that down to? I don't know. Temperature, the tires. We're running winter tires right now. It's a little bit cold outside. I don't know. I guess the next test should be how fast can this car actually go flat out on the Autobahn. Let's find out. The problem with the Autobahn, even though it's technically de-restricted in a lot of places, is that there's other people on the road, and that means you can't always get up to full speed. Just got to be patient.
I don't know what the etiquette is. You sort of tailgate people until they move. Like Audi coming through. Yeah, look, it works. Thank you. Easy on this bend. Ah, more cars. Speed limits. We might never find out what this car's top speed is. Last go. 220, 230, 240, 250, 260, 270, 280, 280, I hit 280. That was 174 miles an hour. And I felt like the car could do a bit more actually. I slowed down because there were people in the way.
Having said that, hammering through Germany with your foot pinned is probably not ideal for the environment or your bills at the petrol station. Thankfully though, if you're light on the throttle, the RS6 has a few tricks up its sleeve that can help the big V8 use less fuel and emit less carbon dioxide, namely mild hybrid technology and cylinder on demand.
Having 8 cylinders is usually pretty bad news for your fuel economy, but the car doesn't have to run with 8 cylinders all the time. No, it has cylinder on demand, which means it can switch from 8 cylinders to 4 cylinders whenever you're not hammering it. So sometimes the car will switch off cylinders 2, 3, 5 and 8 and essentially run as a V4. And the good news is the car switches between 8 and 4 cylinders pretty seamlessly. You can't tell when it's holding back. However, you can tell when the engine switches off completely. It does this because it's a pretty logical thing to do, to want to coast in order to save fuel. So if your engine temperature's right, if your speed is right, if your throttle position's right, it will basically switch off the engine completely and just sail. Plus, it has cameras that scan the road ahead. If it detects a car in front is slowing down, it will send a little vibration into your right foot to let you know that maybe you want to lift off. And when you do, again, it cuts the engine off and in theory, can save you petrol.
But as I left Germany for Belgium and the drive for the very, very wet, it became clear that with 600 horsepower under my right foot, no amount of coasting or vibrating from the pedal would help me return Audi's claimed 24 miles per gallon.
The reality of the situation is that I've been getting about 15 to 18 miles per gallon. So even with all of that tech, it's still a very thirsty car. There's a couple of other little annoyances that I don't quite like about the RS6, even though it's a great car. First things first, the key. It's a little bit cheap and tacky as far as I'm concerned. For a £100,000 car, you'd want something a little bit better than that. Secondly, 100 grand and you don't get every single feature that you might want. For example, it doesn't come with automatic keyless entry. You have to pay an extra £1,900 to get that. Automatic cruise control, also not included as standard. You have to pay another £1,900 to get that included. So even though it is a lovely car, there's a couple of things that are not quite ideal.
Niggles aside, the RS6 really is a fantastic way to drive long distances, and spending time behind the wheel gives you plenty of opportunity to reflect on any journey. The soothing beauty of the rain as I left Germany, the surprising variety of interesting car choices as I navigated Belgium, and particularly how much willpower it takes to not unleash 600 horsepower on the vast stretches of empty road I encountered in the Netherlands. France was gone in the blink of an eye, and the Channel Tunnel gave me yet another opportunity to collect my thoughts.
So we made it onto the Eurotunnel, and now I guess I've got the chance to reflect on the journey, reflect on the car. Would I rather spend about 2 hours on a plane or 6-7 hours in an RS6? No contest really, RS6 every single time. This thing has been unflappable. It's been great up in the mountains, it's been amazing on the Autobahn, and even just pottering around, just driving slowly at the speed limit on the motorway, yeah, it's been absolutely tremendous. Sometimes when you spend a lot of time with a car, you can start to find faults with it, little niggles that annoy you over a long journey, but this thing, if anything, my appreciation for it has just gone up and up and up. It's sky high right now. What a journey.
Back in the UK, and with over 1,000 miles completed, It's easy to see why this is such a special car, one that makes a welcome change from the obvious monotony of flying. It's a car you'll genuinely want to spend time in, no matter how long the journey. If you're looking for something that blends practicality and performance, something that has an obvious but understated charm, there aren't many sweeter than the Audi RS6.